So what's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Today I'm pretty sure you know who's on the screen. Maybe some of you are new. This is Kellen. Kellen is our, I think resident everything that we need a person to take care of a lot of issues and problems, but also the good stuff as well that we have going on. Here and to his, next to him is his, great, lovely wife, Dr. Tina Coleman. They're here today to talk about a new children's book that just came out called London and Sydney Explore the World Cameroon edition. So Kellen and Dr. Coleman, thank you for joining us on the show today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for having us, Phil. It's always a pleasure.
All right, so let's talk about children's books here for a minute, because children's books is something I really don't hear people talking about too often. They talk about doing relationship books, books about many other things outside of children's books. So this is the second children's book you've done?
This is the third, because London wrote his first book at 7, which was a crossword puzzle book. All of them on Amazon and everywhere else a book can be, bought.
Okay, because the first one I saw was the Texas edition of the book.
Correct. That was the first edition, our first try. And, it's a learning experience. And it's really based on our family's travels. We like to travel. I think that's the best teacher. So that was where we came up with this idea, when London was 1 or 2.
Okay. All right. So let's get into that. So 1 or 2 years old, coming up with an idea of children's books. Why?
Because I'm a cool daddy and I wanted to be able to document for, the time. Sometimes, you do things with kids. We like to travel. We try to take a trip somewhere at least every month or every other month, and to be able to document it, because sometimes kids will forget where they've been. And even London and Sydney have been to over a dozen countries, I believe, and sometimes they're like, oh, we did that. So to document that, to always say them schoolwork, them dishes have to be done. That's why you got to go on this trip, that trip. And you really, travel is the best teacher. As you and I have spoke about, and you've said it publicly, inside the school system, you can only learn so much. Your real education is when you step out the door, what you're reading and what you're exposed to.
And I'll just add a little bit to what Kellen said. Our motivations for children's books were a little bit different. So for me, when London was very young, I wanted her to read about books about characters who looked like her, written by people who looked like her. And so I found myself ordering books for her, even at a very young age, from Canada, trying to get books from Africa. I could just not find enough books here in the US with stories that resonated with me. So when I read children's books, and a lot of them were great, but a lot of it was centered around Blackness being explained. So my hair is cool too. Oh, my skin is beautiful too. That's fine, but I don't have those conversations with my daughter, and I wanted her to have a story around books without it being explaining Black trauma or the Black experience, I would go see a book and Barbie has 10 books about going to the beach. And I'm like, Black people go to the beach too. I want books like that about her, introducing her to things. And so when I started doing research about children's books, I found out that, first of all, at the time when I did the research, I think it's around 2015, less than 11% of all children's books were written about children of color, all children of color. We're talking about Black, Hispanic, Native American, Asian, everybody else. It was less than 11%. And out of that 11%, majority of the writers were white. And so that's why a lot of the stories did not resonate with us. And so being solution-oriented, I made a decision to, instead of complaining about it, I could write my own books. And so children literacy, it's something that's very important to us. Travel is something that's very important to us. So we merged the two. And that was my motivation in joining the adventure as children's book authors.
Yeah, you definitely brought up a good point about a lot of books being centered on, I guess just bringing up our self-esteem, bringing up our self-esteem here in America, because, of course, we constantly attack. But, outside of that one aspect of what we deal with, you're right. We don't really see us enjoying life as we should, or even having our children travel or even documenting those things because, you know, like my little girl, you know, she's been to 3 countries so far. You know, I didn't go to no countries at all until I became a grown man, you know, and I seen just based on how she moves or how she thinks, you know, it definitely it shapes their mind a lot different. So yeah. And trust me, I talk to my child about, you know, when things come up about racism, sure, but that's not the bulk of our conversation. So yeah, I do get what you're saying.
Exactly. Black trauma is well documented in this country, and Black excellence is well exalted. But there's a lot of everyday life that is just beautiful and not traumatic, that is just ignored. And so when you look at a lot of stories that move people, they're about ordinary people. I don't want my children growing up to feel like they have to be a superhero version of themselves to exist. Right? And they don't have to be, there's just this joy in childhood, right? A lot of the books that you all read, like we all read as kids, was just about kids having regular adventures. And I think that's important to show other aspects of our humanity and not just have these two extremes of it's either all trauma or it's a 7-year-old that graduated from medical school and became a doctor at 9. There's a lot of people that are lost in between those two. And I think that it's important for us to tell everyday stories about everyday heroes. And there are a few children books authors will do that. And so I think what you're doing is great, having us on this platform to talk about these experiences. And even your daughter going to 3 countries, I don't know how old she's, under 10 or maybe around that age. That's amazing.
She's 9. She's 9.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And those stories need to be told. It's possible because for a lot of people, it's just the fear of the unknown. And once we show that there's permission, there's space in that, there's security in doing so, then it opens up our world.
Yeah, she still reminds me about, you know, we was in Istanbul, Turkey, where, you know, it had a big snowstorm show up. So, you know, she decides to get snowballs and start, you know, throwing all these snowballs at me. I said, yeah, you know, she still talks about that. I hit you with the snowballs and all that. So, yeah, you know, that's an experience, like I said, that I didn't get to have at well, at least she was 7 at the time. So I didn't get that experience at 7 years old, you know.
Turkey's amazing. A lot of the history of the world happened in Turkey. You know, it was the epicenter of the Roman Empire for a while, you know, and now it's like this, it was the head of like Constantinople, you know, which was the head of the Roman Empire for a while. And there's just so much history around that area. I think that it's amazing that your daughter got to experience that in person. And I think that she's going to carry those memories forever.
Oh yeah, most definitely. So the page count of the book, it says 144 pages. I'm like, well, that's kind of extensive a little bit for a children's book. What went into that?
Well, so it's I guess calling it a children's book is really a misnomer. It's not really a children's book. It's a book about children will travel. So it's really a travel guide. So our first book we did was truly a children's book. Kellen spearheaded that project about in Texas, and it was geared for children, for early readers, for people that were interested. So what we wanted to do is invite the whole family on these adventures. So it's kind of like a guide. So most of the sites you see are real sites. They exist. When you go to Cameroon, you can visit them. We share a lot about the history of the country. We share a lot about the culture of the country. So the way that we designed it is really so people can enjoy it as a family.
And Phil, it might be hard to see here, but like this is rafting, whitewater rafting. You can do it in Maine. You can also do it in Cameroon.
That's right.
And everywhere else. And so, you know, even adults can buy this book and say, let's put this on the table at home. Everybody can go through it, learn. And then when you do say you want to go to Cameroon, because a lot of us, our history comes, or DNA, when we go to African ancestry or, you know, whichever other platform. I'm going to promote the black one, Miss Gina Page, on this program. But when they get Cameroon, now they can see a guide and kind of humanitize thing. Because, you know, when we take people to Africa, animals have been sold to us. Corruption and everything negative, but Africa is so much bigger than animals. And, you know, I don't want to see another safari anytime soon.
Yeah. I get what you're saying about the safari, because I'm like, you know, once you really see, like I said, the one I enjoyed the most was the Lion Park out there in South Africa. But outside the Lion Park, yeah, I'm like you. I'm good on safaris. You know.
Yeah,
I'm so
yeah.
good.
It makes Africa very one-dimensional too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's so much more out there than animals. Like I said, to me, I enjoy the culture and the food more than anything.
Yeah,
exactly.
And this is a statue right here that when you go to Yaoundé, people, you'll see this statue. And so again, we're just documenting history, and it's just, you know, one step to getting us all closer to where we were before slavery and all, you know, the stuff that you report on daily.
And I wanted it to be like art, right? So we didn't want a book that was half the size, super compressed. You couldn't really see the picture. So we did it really coffee table style. Like, I don't know if you guys, my parents were journalists, but you remember those big pictures you used to have with like photographs from all around the wall that you used and put in your coffee table. So we wanted to create something that would last, stand the test of time, and be able to be used as a conversation piece to encourage other people to travel as well.
Yeah, now let me ask you a question. Is Paul Biya in the book?
Well, yes, believe it or not, Paul Biya is the oldest, still living head of state in the world after the Queen died. He is in the book. He is 92 years old, and he has been president since before I was born.
Lord Jesus, Paul Biya.
He's planning to run again. So this is definitely not like a redacted history. We documented what the actual, you know, truth is. From the name of Cameroon, you know, Cameroon is really named after shrimp in Portuguese, because Portuguese came and they saw this river just full of shrimp, you know, in River Uri, and then they just called it Rio dos Cameros, and then that name became Cameroon later on.
So I'm glad you brought that up. Like just on a side note, why haven't the name been changed then?
That's a good question for our leaders. You know, that's a really, really good question. I think that just the historical in keeping people have just kept with that. It seems odd that your naming of your country would be from another group of people that have nothing to do with the country, but that's colonialism for you, and that's the reality of Africa. And so we need to make that clear. That's a great question. Why is it named? Why would you have a country named after shrimp that has nothing to do with anything about the culture? Yeah. You know, named it after lions. That's what Cameroon is known for, indomitable lions. But that's a good point.
Yeah, because just like when Julius Malema said that if he ever became president, he'd change the name from South Africa to Azania. I was like, oh yeah, I'm with that. You know, because that's really the name of that land. You know, so. Yeah, I think that's a revolutionary thing in itself. But you know, when the girls themselves, when they went to Cameroon, or did they get more acclimated to the culture, or they just kind of like, yeah, you know, I mean, do they like Cameroon a lot like that? I mean, what's their position on it?
You know how kids are. It depends on what day and what time you ask them. But I was there for a month. I went for a rotation. So I was working actually the whole time I was in Cameroon. But I think the love pieces of Cameroon, they got to hang out more with their grandparents. They got to hang out a little bit more with family members. Life is a little bit slower. They have more freedom. There's not a lot of fear. They can play more easily, and everything is just cheaper and everything's more accessible. It's just more relaxed.
They enjoyed it because grandpa and grandma took them to go have ice cream and different things. But the older they get, the more they get to kind of pick and choose. Now, we have it documented that when we were in Sierra Leone getting our citizenship, the journalist asked them, did they like which one? And they preferred Sierra Leone. But again, being older, and then it was a different type of trip. So, you know, every country has its cons and its pros, but they enjoy the travel part and just kind of, you know, exploring.
Okay, yeah, because okay, so they're dual citizens right now, correct?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Almost triple.
Yeah, and don't look. You look at that Mexico. Mexico is next, you know, because we're, you know, Viva la Mexico.
But now, so could they get Cameroonian citizenship or no?
Yes, they can, because I'm born of Cameroon origin.
Oh, okay. But I thought they don't allow dual citizenship.
For depending on your position in the country.
Okay, gotcha. Nepotism.
Some are more equal than others.
Yeah, nepotism and who you know.
Yeah, and also it depends. Like for a lot of athletes, historically, that rule has been waived, right? If Cameroon doesn't allow dual citizenship, why was Joel Embiid just a few weeks ago asking about, what country will I play for? So it just kind of it depends on each individual situation. But as a general rule, they don't encourage it.
But you get to choose at 18 as the current rule, and staying legal and staying fair. You can choose at 18 which one you want, and that rule could change by the time they're 18. And again, what she just mentioned, we don't want to spoil anybody's status.
Right.
Well, maybe when Paul Biya go see the law, maybe somebody new will come in and change that.
Possibly. Hopefully.
Yes, I think that more African countries are really appreciating the importance of the diaspora. So I think that for a huge part, Cameroon has kind of ignored its diaspora, but its diaspora plays a very important role in what direction things take and how people are motivated. Because again, their impetus at this level is when you're investing back home. We've noticed that countries that allow dual citizenship get more money invested back from people that are outside, because then their investments are secure. So it's really in the interest, and African Americans that are born, that have the DNA, from that part of the world, also should have a path to citizenship. Is the argument that a lot of Africans and people in the diaspora are actually making.
Yeah, you talk about citizenship. We've had these conversations, and when they tell you, come back home, well, it's kind of like you're telling your child. If you tell your child to come back home, but you never give them a key, they're visiting. They're not back home. And, some people have made this argument. I actually kind of agree with the argument and say, well, how can we come back home, but you won't even give us a citizenship to come back? At least we don't have to be going through visas and all this other crap, and we got to go through the same process that even the folks got to go through to get a citizenship. That's why I think whoever changes that in itself, that's going to change everything.
Absolutely. I agree with you. And I think that if you spoke to more people our age, most of them will share that sentiment, because it's Africa as a form of heritage is not so focused on, where you were born. It's really about your bloodline. And and if your bloodline is from the country, you should have a path to citizenship. I think a lot of young people share that sentiment, and that's something that should be looked at. And we know that countries will offer a path to citizenship for people in the diaspora that don't force you to choose. Especially my children, they're really African Americans, right? Their father is American, of African origin. They should have a right to vote. You shouldn't make them choose. That just makes sense.
Right.
Because if they choose, whatever country they don't choose loses out on what they have to contribute. So I was raised to think of myself as a citizen of the world, so wherever I go, I make my home, but I know where I'm from. I'm very clear about that. I'm very clear about where my bloodline comes from. And that defines how I move around this world. And I think that everybody else of Cameroon origin, even if it's 5%, especially if you didn't have a say as to how your DNA got where it got, should have a path to citizenship.
But since you mentioned all that, and you also talking about the book and all that, so when you're blending what we would call like intercultural marriages, right? Because Kellen, he's Black American, or some of y'all say FBA, right? And then Sister Tina, born and raised in Cameroon. How did y'all blend the culture together with children? Because when you have children, that's when you try to say, okay, how am I going to raise them culturally? You understand what I'm saying?
I think we agreed that we were going to raise them the way we were raised, and take the good parts and take the things that, Tina and I have known each other 20 plus years. So we were talking about some of this 20 years ago when we were you can't see Tina's shirt, but I'm a popper collar in Grambling. We talked about these things. And so it was just that we're going to go to church. That's what we're going to do. No matter where we at, we're going to go to church. We're going to figure it out, so the kids can be raised in church. Might not be able to give them the same church experience that we had, because we're in totally different states and part of the world, but we're going to have that Bible focus, so they know even when we're not here, you can go to your scriptures, go get the answers. And that, and it's always a back and forth, and, we're always learning each other. but it's just compromise at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that at the end of the day, you have to kind of create your own family's culture, your family's subculture. So you think what are non-negotiables for him and what are non-negotiables for me. And we first of all find what we agree on and then find what we can negotiate on and then go from there. And also you adjust it to every child because you don't raise every child the same way. And we know that you can put two kids in the same environment and they can have two completely different results. Same parents.
Oh
same
boy.
People like
I
to
know exactly what you're talking about.
Exactly. The same, you can tell your two kids the exact same thing. One child is going to listen, one child is not. And so it's not like we don't have it figured out, but I think that we find things that we agree on. For example, travel was something that was like a faith. Yes, we're going to raise our kids based on faith. It's very common. But a lot of friends that are of different faiths, right? You have to kind of figure out what are the principles you can stand on. For us, that was not an issue. Is travel going to be a big part of what you do? Absolutely. What does travel mean? Is it something you do for recreation or is it something you use as a tool of education? We decided to use it as a way of education. So we don't travel when we have time. We do our live traveling. So we're out of the country maybe 20 plus weeks a year. That means our kids can go to regular school. Okay, what does that mean? We have to homeschool. So we have to then make adjustments. If I'm homeschooling, what kind of job do I have? Can I have a regular job with 10 weeks off as a doctor? Maybe not. Maybe I have to find another path of career. Does a standard career work for you? No, maybe entrepreneurship is that option. So it's always that give and take, to kind of find your own path and find what works best for you.
Yeah, see the homeschool part, that because see, like I was, like I said, I always had my daughter in private school, and then pandemic, we were doing things at home, but then some things just didn't work out with that particular school, so we were doing the homeschool thing, and I actually love the homeschool, I really do, because you, like you said, you can move around, do whatever you want to do, but some kids I work with, some kids not, so we end up finding another private school, put her in, and she loves this school, she loves it, right? But now you're back to a schedule again, right? So it's not like I could pop up today and say, oh, okay, everybody going. So, well, I got to wait till them, the holidays come up like everybody else. So yeah, that is an advantage. If your kids can do well in homeschool, yeah, that's a beautiful thing.
And when let me clarify, when I say I homeschool, I don't mean I homeschool. What I mean that I found somebody in another country in Africa, because one of our tenets, our principles that we base the marriage on was we create jobs in Africa, right? Mm-hmm. We create jobs and opportunities for other people. So I found somebody that had a master's degree back home that was looking for a job and found a US-based curriculum here that is child-led. And so they teach them that basically the children do the work on the US-based curriculum. The teacher in Africa corrects it. And then he adds two other aspects in addition to the US-based curriculum. They add a African history and geography because it's important. My children, like Lana was 7 or 6 years old, and I asked her, who is Martin Luther King? Oh, he was a pastor. I was like, he was more than that. So that's a problem for me, And then number two was Nelson Mandela. Oh, I've kind of heard about, no, that's not good enough for me. So we need to have a structure. And so we need to have this. So they have a teacher that is based on Cameroon, has a master's degree, does one-on-one teaching with them, does the US-based curriculum, and then supplements that with French language because I want them to be bilingual like me. I speak French, it's my first language. And then he adds African history and geography. So it's a sacrifice, but we build our life around it to accommodate that. I don't sit, and sometimes I have to get in and teach them individual lessons, but very seldom do I have to do that. But the girls, they're up, they're not late for school, they get up on their own. The 9-year-old, they're up by 7 a.m. It's automated. It's not like this, there's no homework, all of this extra stuff, there's no all of this homework. So it really streamlines our life. So it's kind of going against the grain, but it's doable if you use the appropriate resources. I'm not going to sit there and be arguing with fractions about my daughter, and she's asking me why.
And if you know me, I do no fractions with them. So that's not, but because they're closer in age, they can motivate each other. And that's also a blessing versus, your child all her siblings are older, so they're all done with school, and it's just easier for that. But it also teaches them you are in control of your life. Like, we can tell you, like Joe Jackson or, you know, Mr. Knowles, hey, we're gonna push you, but now you got to push yourself at some point. And we do that from the education to the jiu-jitsu to the swimming to the Peloton. Like, I'm not gonna tell you every day what you have to be doing. You should know it at certain times, and we're gonna stop talking, you know, and you try to put that into them over and over and over again.
Yeah, but you know, well, tell people, you know, like to wrap up, tell people exactly how to get the book. I know it's a Kindle version out right now, and then you got a hardback coming out in what, December, correct?
Hardback is coming out. We have the paperback coming out too. It, you know, so whichever one, because the hardback is really art, and you know, we know it's expensive, but because of inflation and everything is rising, the price is the price, so we don't, you know, get charged back and lose money. But Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, your local library, if you do not even have the $9.99 for the Kindle version, and we love reviews, if you go to your local librarian and say, request this book, it is available. They won't buy it from Amazon, but they know where they'll buy it, from either Ingram or Baker and Taylor. It's registered to be bought. Holler at me if you need any more information on that, if they're giving you any wahala, any issue, because, you know, for free 99, you can get this book. Even the ebook is available at your librarian's the next purchase she makes. He or she makes a purchase every quarter, and we want to be in the number, because still Black books are not over 12% yet from our latest, you know, little Google search, Chat GDP and all that. So we need to keep rising those books, but we need the audience to be requesting them from the library, buying them, and also making a review so they know these books sell. You guys remember when they said Black movies don't sell overseas? We've proven that's a lie. We need to do the same thing with children's books and so many other of our products.
That's true. And go ahead, Phil, sorry.
No, I no, you gonna say something? Because I was gonna just add something.
Oh, I was just going to say that I think what Kellen said, just piggyback on what he said, I think that it's important that when we see stories, not just that book, like, okay, forget that book, this is very self-serving, but if you see people of color or people from that group, right, whatever group it is, it's better to get the stories from the people that are part of the organization. So when you look at Black books by Black authors, those stories, in my opinion, tend to be more authentic. So instead of just talking, because a lot of us talk the talk, oh, I wish we had more Black books. Well, we have them, but nobody buys them. So I encourage you, if you don't buy a book, buy somebody else's book. It's important that this number is a push, because that will determine the books that the library buys next year, the year after, the year after, the year after, the year after. If you can't afford it, call your local librarian and ask them, you're right. Call your local librarian and ask them to purchase the book for you.
All right. And so, ladies and gentlemen, right now you can go and get the book. Like I said, London and Sydney, Explore the World, Cameroon on Amazon. We'll put a link to that. You can get the Kindle. When the paperback coming out?
The 11th and the 15th, both those days. And, you know, yeah, that's the play. December.
Okay, so December 11 and December 15. I already put in an order for a hard back, because I just like something, you know, I like something a little more sturdier than a paperback, you know, just to have and to keep, you know, for kids and things like that. So you know, make sure that if you want to get it now on Kindle, you can, or you want to wait, but you know, just make sure you support time that we all are putting out books or anything, you know, in the community, whether it's me or whoever else, Sister Demetria, anybody that's putting out books, you know, or different products, because you know, it means a lot when the community support. So, you know, I want to thank y'all for coming, you know, taking time talking with me today about this wonderful new project of education. Y'all stay blessed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Be blessed.